Episode 6 of The Acolyte just dropped. What's the follow-up with what we got last week? Bright Suns, everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review video for The Acolyte. This week we'll be looking into episode 6, and I'm excited not only because this is a follow-up to episode 5, which was absolutely insane. It has become some of my favorite Star Wars media that we've received in a while, but something that I was really fond of in the first two episodes is that we got this kind of dual title, and this week they bring it back as this episode is called Teach/Corrupt. So what are we thinking about that? I know when we left last episode, we saw that May had taken out Osha, or kind of knocked her out, cut her hair, and jumped onto the transport ship with Sol thinking that May was Osha, and we have Osha knocked out and pretty much just what we assume is taken away by Kamir, who was revealed last week to be this master to May. He's been a mysterious figure ever since even before the series came out, and now we finally see that it's Kamir, and this is now the follow-up to it. It's been anticipated all week, at least for me, to see where do we go from here. But as always, if you have not seen this week's episode of The Acolyte, pause this video and go watch that new episode of The Acolyte, because we do get a lot of, not backstory, but we do get some more information, and we kind of dive a little bit deeper into what we realized and found out last week. So episode 6, we open up once again with Osha knocked out. She wakes up and she's kind of in this like serene kind of temple, I would call it. All of her stuff is kind of laid out very nicely. There's like a stew cooking in the background somewhere. And she's just trying to figure out exactly where she is because she's not really sure. Girls, chill. But she's kind of looking at her surroundings. Side note, during this opening scene, there's this like little creature. It looks practical, and it's got like a little nozzle like looking thing, kind of like an elephant, like a trunk, but I thought it was insanely cute. So as she's investigating her surroundings, she's able to get outside to this giant beach. The camera kind of pans out and we see that we are now on this island just titled Unknown Planet. At first, I thought we were back on Crate, the island planet from Last Jedi, where we find Luke Skywalker and where he trains Rey. Because it looks exactly like this, and it made me think that maybe what I saw was a little creature was a porg. Don't have names for them yet, but from what I've seen on the internet, they're people are just calling them rock birds, which I'm fine with. It's an easier name to pick up on. Update, so Star Wars just came out on the little creatures from episode 6. They're called Skura and are described as part anteater and part duck. And I'm obsessed with all parts of this creature. As Osha is looking out at the ocean, we see Kamir walking away out of the frame, and she goes and follows him. We then cut back to the Jedi transport ship leaving Kofar with Sol and Osha, but it's actually May and Basil has Pip's head. Pip was used to get Kamir out of the way and attract the bugs to essentially take Kamir away and stop all the bloodshed. Sol is trying to get a message out to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and he's having a little bit of trouble doing so. He has May help him out. We then cut to Basil with Pip's head. He gets onto this workstation and is able to reboot Pip, which thank God. We saw him get picked up in the last episode, but I was hoping that this wouldn't be the end of Pip. He reboots right back up and he's fine. It's also on the Jedi transport ship that we get this very I'd say sincere now, but just wait. We get this just heartfelt moment with Sol, who himself is trying to reboot the system, but the camera kind of just sits on Sol. As you can see, he's frustrated with what just happened. He has lost his entire team besides Osha, but he just watched all of these Jedi get absolutely destroyed by this Sith Lord. It's not something that had been seen in a very long time, and we see his confliction. It almost kind of feels like he's submitting to those feelings of anger and hatred and this lust for revenge to avenge his fallen comrades. In the end, he's able to repress it and get right back to it, and it's just amazing acting by Lee Jun-jae. But again, I have my reserves. Back to the unknown planet, we cut back to Kamir, who is essentially just gonna go for a swim. We see this little body of water, and he begins to get undressed. I didn't really talk about it in the last episode, but dude, Manny Jacinto is jacked as hell. He is cut, ripped, just all this definition on his arms and back. It's crazy. We cut back and we kind of see him disrobe, and I almost thought we were gonna see some cheeks on Star Wars, but we did not. Cuts right back to Osha. Kamir dips into the water, he starts swimming out, he has all of his belongings kind of sat there on the shoreline, and Osha starts walking towards it. We see Kamir's lightsaber sitting on top of there. Osha picks up the lightsaber. Kamir, who again hasn't even looked back yet at what's going on behind him, he just goes and asks, how does it feel to hold a lightsaber again? She gets up into her stance with her lightsaber kind of like this, and he compliments her form, says she can lift up the elbow a little bit. But they get into this discussion. He asks her, oh, how do you think I can read your mind? Because I can. Your feelings are clouding your judgment and your thoughts, making them a little bit more easier to manipulate and maybe later down the line corrupt. Something that I also noticed is that his voice changed from what we got when Kamir was on Olega versus what we see now. It's almost like a completely different person. So shout out to Manny Jacinto for just creating such depth for this character. I have really loved the love that Kamir has been receiving from the Star Wars community, and just the variety and villains that we've been getting in Star Wars altogether. I mean, we got Baylan Skoll, now we have Kamir. These dark side users that we're getting are just something else, and they're going to be remembered for a very long time, especially Kamir. I mean, he had such a grand entrance in the last episode. So they begin talking. She has all of these opportunities to try and kill him, but she doesn't. She starts to kind of put ideas into her head as to why did she leave the Jedi Order, but she obviously is reserved on answering any sort of questions, as she just watched this man kill essentially her entire family. She is now seeing the death of a second family in her lifetime. So obviously it's tough, and she's not wanting to answer a lot of questions at this time. So back to the transport ship, we see that Sol starts to talk to May. He is starting to have feelings of regret, and even going so far as saying that he thinks that it is time to face the High Council, and May begins to ask for what, and before he even gets to answer, the power goes out, and he asks May to go and figure out what's going on and get it fixed. We now jump back to Coruscant, where we see Vernestra on a call regarding some shift in political power, and that they're mentioning a senator who is trying to gain power very quickly, which my mind instantly went to Palpatine, but I don't think it is. We have another Jedi Knight come in who we later learned is called Mog. Talk to Vernestra that we have received communications from Master Sol from Kofar, and that we couldn't really get a lot of the message, but he essentially says that the team has taken casualties. Vernestra asks how many, and he says all of them except Master Sol. Vernestra jumps into action, which I was very surprised about, because she's all about diplomacy and wanting to do things the correct way, but she takes personal interest in this mission and says, ready my ship, we're going to Kofar to rescue Master Sol. We jump back to the unknown planet, where we get a little bit more dialogue between Kamir and Osha as they're walking down the beach. He later says that he was a Jedi a very long time ago. Osha says that she's never heard of him. He then repeats back that it was a very long time ago, but he's not that old, so I'm sure maybe it was just erased from the Jedi archives. Not something we haven't seen before, but it's kind of where that conversation ends as we jump back to the Jedi transport ship. May tries to fix the power, and it's throughout the episode that we continue getting shots of Basil, who knows what's up. He knows that that's not Osha. We kind of get that interaction from him as he kind of like does this little these little moves, this little dance. I thought it was adorable. and he attacks May, like grabs onto her leg, and I think just starts nibbling on it. She's able to like kick him off. She looks at Pip. Pip squirts her in the face, which is what Pip did to Basil in episode 4, and I just thought it was really funny that they had him do it again. May picks up Pip and is able to factory reset him. Is interesting because the whole time his eyes are white, but once they reset him, his eyes turn red. May gives him a new body, and he's able to run a diagnostic on the power to see what the actual issue is. We cut back to the unknown planet where we see more.
Cool, Rose.
This is also when Osha begins to confront Kamir about what happened, like naming the people that he's killed. Like, you killed Jackie, you killed Yord. Kamir says Yord wanted to arrest you for a crime you didn't commit from the very first time they saw you. You still want to protect him. Jackie was said in the last episode when Sol was like, she's just a child, but Kamir said, well, you brought her here, so maybe it's kind of your fault, and that was her job. Jedi protect the innocent at the risk of their own life, and that's Jackie knew the assignment. At this point, he asks Osha, kill me. He walks right up to her. He puts himself right at the ignition chamber of the lightsaber and says, do it. Kill me. Osha says that we cannot harm the unarmed, and he pulls it even closer, like grabs her arm and says, do it. Kill me. So while she has the chamber pointed at Kamir's chest, he asks again, why did you leave the Jedi Order? She said, I left on my own accord. He said, that's not true. Why did you leave? And she says, because I failed. She ignites the lightsaber, points it at Kamir's neck, and that's pretty much it. It's also here when he says, you know, after you've lost your families, when you lose everything, that's when you're finally free. Kind of opening her mind to that idea that letting her feelings control her and let her feelings bring her back to the Force, because it's also here. Osha talks about how the Force is like a muscle. It needs to be trained in order to keep a connection to it. And Kamir says, well, that's what the Jedi have told you, but that's not true. There are other means of connecting through the Force, and that is through stronger feelings like fear, anger, revenge. She says that that is a path to the dark side, but, and he just says, semantics, like tomato, it is a way to connect with the Force. It's something that Osha, that we have seen, obviously she has been kind of struggling with. She saw some connection when she was in the forest in episode 4, when she was kind of connecting with the giant bugs in the episode Day. She has it there, but she hasn't trained this muscle for a while, but Kamir is offering that opportunity to let her feelings bring her back and reconnect her to the Force, and she's not about that for now. We jump back to the transport ship where we get more of these conversations from Sol where he's kind of hinting at, and again, we've been getting this the entire series, where Sol says that he'll explain everything. He's gonna go into depth as to what happened. He's gonna tell us everything, and either something happens, like the power comes out, or a transmission comes in, or anything. He's finding literally any excuse to not talk about what happened on Brendok. But this happens again. As soon as he's about to talk to May, the power comes back on. What a coincidence. And it's here that May begins to walk to the cockpit of the ship, and she gets stunned by Sol. We just see it from the perspective of May. We hear the stun gun go off. She falls to the ground. Because the whole time, I'm like, he kind of knows the difference between Osha and May. Like, he clearly can pick them out when all of Brendok is on fire and collapsing, but he can't when she jumps on a ship with him, and he kind of notices her mannerisms and all of that. So I was very reserved in thinking, like, there's no way he really thinks this is Osha, and this is where we confirm that he pretty much knew the whole time. He knocks her out. Obviously, he's sending this distress beacon from Kofar. They've been above Kofar this entire time. You hear the communications starting to get a little bit better, and they say to please keep your communications on, but while they're talking, Sol turns it off, and he makes that ship jump into hyperspace. Where the hell are we going, Sol? This is now a completely different character from what we've seen. Like, he's on the run now. I'm excited to see what's going on with that. As Sol's ship leaves and jumps right into hyperspace, we see Vernestra's ship come in and begin to land on Kofar. While there, they start talking to the villagers, which we find out that the bugs are called Umbra moths. that colony has hatched, and that is what they think made all the Jedi disappear. Vernestra doesn't believe that, so she takes the troop and they walk into the forest of Kofar. We jump back to the unknown planet where it's just a nice established shot of the Master's mask. Kamir is repairing it, and this is where he begins to talk a little bit more, and we get a confirmation in the show that this is cortosis, the metal that we saw a little bit of in episode 5 that is able to not only deflect lightsabers, but is able to disable them for a few minutes. It was something that was a huge reveal in episode 5. Like, I was still confused as to what was happening, but it's nice that we get this confirmation from Kamir that these are the materials used to build his gauntlet and, more prominently, his helmet. But it's also here that he later explains that the helmet acts as a deprivation chamber, kind of like, blocking out all of his senses, where when he puts it on, it's just him and the Force and the little eye slots. But you have to somewhat make it practical. But it's really cool to get that aspect of this being a deprivation chamber, and that, again, he has completely limited visibility, but he's able to become one with the Force while taking out all of his other senses and letting the Force do the work for him. And I mean, we see it in episode 5. He's obviously a very strong Force user, and this helmet certainly makes that a whole lot better. It's here that we also have Osha ask Kamir, what is it that you want? And he simply just replies with the power of 2, but doesn't go into further depth into what exactly he means by that. I mean, just based from the show, obviously we can think of that from episode 3, with the power of 1, the power of 2, the power of many, the Force that the witches use, this thread, essentially what they call the Force, like their magic. But we don't get any further detail into that. I would love for it to think that it's the power of 2 being, with the Sith, there's always a master and apprentice. Kamir is very dead set on trying to find an apprentice to keep the power of 2 in the Sith going. But again, if he was a Sith, where's his master? What is going on here? We jump back to Kofar, and it's so sad because it's a jump cut right to the dead body of Jecki, and you just see her face and she is completely dead, and it's just awful because I was so upset that Jecki died in the last episode. I was really excited to see what she was going to be doing in the show, and episode 5 just completely ruined that in the best way possible. We see the littered bodies of all of the other Jedi, including Yord. Again, he was doing so well after finally succumbing to what Osha wants, was to help out the Jedi, and just being like, you know what, like, you're right, you obviously didn't do this, like, I don't have my reserves, let's go and help out the Jedi. And he just gets his neck cracked by Kamir. As we're looking at the bodies, we hear audio from episode 5, so I'm thinking of it as that Vernestra is using the Force to kind of take a look at what she's seeing, kind of like what Cal Kestis does in Fallen Order, where he is able to use the Force to take objects and kind of listen to the past, where that object was, and get a bigger story as to what happened. But they begin to kind of talk about, like, who did this? Mog suggests that, all of these bodies are here, but where are Osha and Sol's bodies? Vernestra says that that is a very big accusation, but as they're talking, an Umbra Moth flies out, and this is where we finally get, I think, the last scene from the trailer that we haven't seen yet, and it's the lightsaber whip. Vernestra Force pulls her lightsaber out, ignites it, and whips it right behind her and splits the Umbra Moth in half. And it was really cool, but that's all you get of it. We don't get a lot more. It's literally that shot from the trailer that everybody was freaking out about, and they use it to kill a bug. But I'm hoping that we get more of it with these last 2 episodes that we have. Here's hoping. We cut back to the transport ship where we see May is restrained to a table, and we get a very ominous shot where it's kind of on the left side of May. It pans up, and we see Sol sitting down menacingly. You can almost kind of hear his tone of voice changing, where, throughout the entire show, he's been very compassionate, very caring, kind of worried at most times, but here he feels very calm, almost monotone. It's like looking at a completely different character. He says, I've been waiting for this moment for 16 years, and in this time, I've thought about what I would talk to you about if I had the chance to. Let's talk about it. and cuts to black. So at this point, I thought, again, the episode is over. We're going to get some credits rolling in a second, but we cut back to the unknown planet with another shot of the helmet, and it's this back and forth between Osha and the helmet, and just back and forth until she goes, she grabs the helmet, she puts it on. We just get an interesting POV of just the eye slits from inside the helmet and just heavy breathing from Osha fading into the credits, and we continue to hear her breathing, and it was just a very ominous way to end the episode. But again, it's here that we see the connection between the split title card, whereas, you know, Osha was being taught by the Jedi, essentially, is what we're jumping into. She's getting taught by the Jedi while May is being corrupted by the Master. But now that they have switched, they have literally at this point have switched almost masters, I would say, where May is about to be taught what really happened on Brandok, while Kamir is beginning to corrupt Osha, and we see that in the end where she finally succumbs to putting the helmet on and depriving herself of all other senses to have it just be her and the Force that she's had a lost connection to for a very long time. We're almost done with the Acolyte. There's only 2 episodes left, and there's still a lot of questions, but I was very interested to see what we would get from this week, being that last week it was such an action-heavy episode. There was something going on all the time, so it was kind of a nice change of pace to take a step back, let you absorb everything that just happened, and just leave you with that, while still answering a bit more questions that we still have, especially about Kamir. I mean, now that, you know, he's not just from what he called Han Solo with no Riz, he is now a ripped Sith Lord with some more intention than just wanting to kill Jedi. Why do we have to kill him without a weapon? Why is he just depriving himself in the helmet? Why does he have to use that helmet? Besides wanting to become closer with the Force. What is the power of 2 gonna actually be? It's all questions that I'm excited to hear the answers to in these next upcoming episodes, and it's just sad to see that we're almost done with it. We just have episode 7 and 8, and that'll be the Acolyte. Again, let me know what you thought of episode 6 down in the comments. Like and subscribe for more Star Wars content, but until next time, till the spire, my friends.